Hi, this is Courtney Robinson, or Courtney Bella Robinson, and I'm the author of The Mud and the Lotus, a guide and workbook for students of yoga. A lot of people don't know that for years I've also been blogging and leading classes on sustainability, financial independence, and simple living. And really, for me, what that's about is financial independence, not I call it, my blog spot is The Lost Art of Resourcefulness, and I will put it in the bottom of the YouTube channel so you can go to it if you want. What I've been doing for years is teaching people how to be resourceful, how to live well on what they make and not be into debt, because you really are a slave to the people you owe money to, and it is a miserable way to be, and it ends up controlling your whole life and your mood. And it really isn't as hard as one thinks to dig yourself out. And you can kind of, the way you look at it can kind of be like a game, and it can make you more creative. So if you have a good attitude about it, it can almost kind of be fun. So a lot of people too think, well, you're a yoga teacher, what business do you have talking about money? I don't know that people think that, but I've had a hard time transitioning with what is really something that I'm very passionate about. And yoga simply means connecting the mind to the body. We are all given a body. Most of us are pretty functioning that are watching this. Some people may have disabilities or things that keep them from functioning on the same level, but the majority of people watching this are able to get out and go work and make good decisions. It's just a matter of getting your mindset in line. So that's what we're going to do here. And I'm going to start, excuse me, with some simple things to help you get yourself in a better financial position. So, assuming that you're watching this, you may be struggling with your finances right now. And I speak from experience. I've been in credit card debt. I've gone bankrupt. I've gone where I've inherited money and had it, and I did really well with that and used it to live on and take care of my children. But I've gotten out of debt, got back in debt, and now for the past 14 years, I've managed to stay out of debt for the most part, except for the mortgage and a small car payment. I've managed to pay things off and always live on what I make. So it's something that I have had sticking power with, but that's because I'm constantly studying how to do that and how to be resourceful. The first step is really easy. You just have to take the time to do it. And that is, excuse me, write down everything that is coming in one column. Get a piece of paper, like get yourself a notepad and let that be your money notepad. Everything that comes in one column and all of your bills in the other column. So you need to write down, of course, your housing, your utilities, your insurance, your anything at all that you have coming out that's a monthly payment. And you need to also remember things that aren't necessarily monthly. Sometimes people forget to put things in there. So I'm really taping this for my kids. We have 6 kids between us. They're ages 20 to 32. And when I first started helping my husband with his finances, we've only been married about a month. And when I met him, we were both pretty broke, though I wasn't in debt. And I helped him with his finances by making him sit down, not making him, but he willingly did it, sit down and write down everything that was going out. And what was happening was he wasn't really sure. He had a skewed idea of what was coming in. He was living with the mentality of only bringing in his paycheck from work and not really counting all the side work. And that money was just kind of going, here and there, not really keeping up with it. So he was also forgetting to have things in there like horse feed, hay, the farrier, things that we often don't think about because they don't come around as often. But it's very important that you write down things that are bi-monthly, quarterly, because you're going to have money set back for those things. Then you need to write down about what your budget is for groceries and gas, and you need to be realistic. The other thing is you're going to need to write down any medicines that you have to pay for every month. Make sure you include doctor bills on there as well, and maybe a small clothing allowance. Most of us can get by with the clothes we have for the time being when we're digging ourselves out. So you don't need $100 clothing allowance if you have a bunch of debt and you can't pay it. That would be what comes to the next column. So first thing, don't worry about the budget. Just write down what's going in and what's coming out. A budget is telling your money where to go. Then you have to look at this budget and you have to assess needs versus wants. Recently, excuse me, when I talk, I cough because I've been sick. About a year ago, about 2.5 years ago, I wrote a book and I took off to write the book and I lived on my savings. And this past year, I had a lot of unexpected expenses. My accountant made some errors and I didn't catch them. And so, the buck stops with me at the end of the day. And I ended up having a bunch of back taxes. And so I had savings to live on for the summer and it sucked all of my savings. I either had to pay those taxes or pay interest on those taxes, and it was a lot. So I just decided that I would buckle down. I knew enough to know how to do that, and I paid those taxes rather than getting on a payment plan. But it left me with very little money to live on. So I had to really assess the needs versus wants, and I was able to look through my bills and get really honest. And this is the harder part. A need is food, shelter, basic clothing, your medicine, and maybe your gas and your cell phone. But that's it, pretty much. Beyond that, we justify a lot of needs. Getting your nails done is not a need. Getting massage is not a need. Getting, having more animals. This was a really hard decision. When I got divorced, we had 3 dogs and 2 cats, and 2 of my dogs were really high maintenance dogs, and I loved them, but I just could not afford to take care of them anymore. And so I did find them a good home. It broke my heart, but financially I couldn't. They needed a lot of medical care and a lot of attention, and I was having to work 2 jobs and I didn't have the time to do it. So sometimes we have to make really hard decisions for the temporarily. So that was something that I had to do. Another thing, this year I'm on a no buy clothes, shoes, purses, jewelry, or books. And it's been really tempting. I've really seen how much I actually did buy, even though I'm pretty frugal. I've wanted several times to buy some books, and I've not allowed myself to do that. I'm using and reading what I have. So look at that list and anything that can go. If you have cable, if you have Dish Network, if you don't need it, get rid of it. You don't need cable. You don't need Dish. If it's going to cost you to get rid of it, weigh the cost to get rid of it versus the savings. If there's any other payments on there that you can get rid of them. Cancel things, return things that you don't need. There have been times where I've had to go to the laundromat because I couldn't afford a washer and dryer. So just be really, really gut-wrenchingly honest, and remember, it's not forever, it's temporary. Then to do a budget. Now, I'm going to put this in my notes in my blog to go with this. The way I was taught by my stepmother, and I still use it today, is you make a column and you put all your bills in on one column. The next column, you put the day you get paid. And if you get paid irregular, you might just put the 1st and the 15th or every Friday of the month. Then you write down what you need for food and gas. Now, I will tell you, I've always done it the opposite of this. I wrote down my bills first, and then I made do with food and gas. That might mean I drove less. That might mean that I ate beans that week, but that's what I did. I always paid my bills first, and then whatever was left was for food and gas. Now, that might not be realistic if you have to get to a job or something like that, but you could kind of narrow it down. So let's say you had $500 by Friday. You knew you were going to get paid. You were going to have $500, and you owe the electric company $200, and you know rent's coming out next week and it's $600 and you're only going to get $500, so you need to put some money back for rent as well. And then you have, let's say you put $200 back for rent, then that leaves you just $100. And so you then sit down and you have to figure out, after you do that, what your food is going to be, etc. So every time there's a pay period, you want to write it down. If you're working multiple jobs, just get as close as you can. When you get paid, put all of your money in the bank, and then sit down and pay all your bills as soon as possible. Do not wait, because the money will go. So as often as you can, put your money in the bank, get your balance, take out anything that's, any checks that haven't cleared, and then pay it. Do not use a debit card without tracking your expenses. In this situation, when things are really, really tight, what I would suggest is when you get paid, paying your bills and then taking out the cash for food and gas. It is a pain in the butt, I know, to have to go into the store and pay for gas every time, but it is a way to keep you honest and without draining your account. In this day and time, people don't balance their checking account like they should anymore. For the most part, they just kind of use their debit card, and then they check their balance and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm out of money. This happened to us this week. I thought we had quite a bit of money in there. We paid a bunch of miscellaneous bills, and I was shocked that we spent like $900, and I didn't feel like I bought anything. It was just groceries, paying someone for some work they did for us, paying 2 medical bills, and then it was gone. So you got to really get serious on not using the debit card. So that's kind of the basic budget, and I will also write it down. Another thing that I would encourage you to do is check out books by Dave Ramsey or Larry Burkett. I started out with Larry Burkett. He's the one who was Dave Ramsey's mentor. And what you can do is you just go to the Dave Ramsey website, and it'll say find a class in your area, and you put your zip code in, and it will give you all the churches and places that are offering classes. And sometimes it costs to take a class, but a lot of times the churches will donate it for free. So even if it costs, I would encourage you to do it. It's worth it. It will change your life. So you've assessed what comes in, you assessed what's going out, you've got your budget, you've written down everything that's coming in, everything that's going out. And at the top of each column, what I would do is, like, let's say I made $500, and then on another job I made $100. So I would put that, cleaning houses, $100, paycheck $500. And I would put $600, and then I would take out rent, -$200. Electric $300. Now I have $200 left for food and gas. I would leave a little in the bank to have wiggle room, and then the next week you have the same thing. Do this for a month at a time. Sometimes I would do this a quarter at a time, so I could predict unexpected things that might come up that I didn't plan for. After you have your budget and everything ready, it's time to get serious about an emergency fund. Emergencies don't happen nearly as much when you have an emergency fund, because they don't become emergencies anymore. Knowing you're going to need tires and brakes, that's not an emergency. That's something you can plan for. So this time of year is tax season, and a lot of people get a tax refund. And so what I would suggest with that tax refund is you sit down and you put at least $1,000 of that tax refund in an emergency fund. Then you act like it never existed. And I don't care what you owe, just act like it doesn't exist. If you can't do 1,000, at least do 500. Then the balance of it, you're going to pay off any debts you have. You want to pay the smallest debt first. And Dave Ramsey does this in a way that's the snowball effect. But let's say also, you get $5,000, $1,000 goes in an emergency fund. You know that you need new tires, you know that you need new brakes. Go ahead and get that stuff done. Pay your bills. And maybe leave out a little bit for fun money, maybe $100, not a lot. Don't go crazy, but it's okay to have a little bit of fun. But for the most part, 90% of that is going to go on your expenses. Then if you don't have a tax return coming in, regardless, it's time to sell stuff. Look at what you have a yard sale, put stuff on Swap Shop, put stuff on Facebook Swap Shop, Craigslist, start selling stuff and getting rid of stuff. And look at this as an opportunity, because what happens is when we are limited, it forces us to be creative, and that gives us a sense of empowerment. It teaches us how smart we are. When we're just busy and going through the motions and getting ourselves in debt, we're not being creative. We're just being busy. So, like, one of the reasons that I put some limits on myself, self-imposed limits this year, was because we have 2 mortgages right now and 2 of everything, 2 utility bills, 2 homeowners insurance. Everything is double. And though I planned for that and knew that was a calculated risk that I knew we could afford, but it would make things tight, it has forced me to have to be creative. So now I will go to the library this week and get some books so I don't have to go buy books. I will use the clothes I have to encourage me to dress with what I own. And the truth is, I have plenty of stuff. It just gets buried in all that crap. And you get lazy and you go into Target and then you see something you want and you bring it home and then you just have more stuff. But it frees up time from shopping when you put some self-imposed limits on yourself. Once you get out of this situation, you need to kind of have a plan for when you'll be out. And once you get out of this situation, then you need to make a plan to continue to be resourceful and not get yourself back into it. That means having things like making sure that you have health insurance so that you don't get sick and incur a lot of medical bills. Making sure you have good insurance, an emergency fund in place, and getting yourself out of debt so that when something does happen, and it will, life happens to all of us. You're going to have to replace your car at some point. You're going to have, some dental work or something at some point. Life is going to happen. Make sure that you get all the coverages that you need, keep them paid up, pay your bills on time. And one thing I see happen to a lot of people is they get bills and they don't call and make arrangements. You could avoid a ton of fees by calling and making arrangements. And that's one thing I didn't say on the budgeting. When you make the budget, call your creditors if you're behind and tell them that you're going to pay $25 a week or $50, and be realistic. You're probably not going to take the time to sit down and pay $25 a week. So what you could do, unless you program that into your banking, which I highly recommend you have online banking with your bank. That way you can check in every other day, look at your account, see where your money's going. But always call your creditors and let them know what your plan is if you're not paying things on time. I've had situations, especially since we now have 2 houses, where I'll pay the electric bill. And I've paid the electric bill on the house in town twice, thinking I was paying the farm bill. And it's just I've been so busy, I've made mistakes. I've called them and they've taken off the fees and things like that. So just know that if you will call and work with people, you'll save yourself all those fees most of the time. They'll work with you if you're honest. Now, if you've been behind a lot, they're probably not going to work with you. But once you build back up that reputation, they will again. And that's basically what I have. I'll put some notes in the blog spot, and the blog spot is the Lost Art of Resourcefulness.blogspot.com, and it will be in the link. And if you need any kind of financial information, there's tons of blog posts and video blogs there. Thank you.